When I was a freelancer, I got really addicted to video games, and it got to the point where I was playing so much that I couldn't even move my fingers. Like at the end of the day, I would just play probably about 12 hours every day, and I couldn't understand it because I had what I thought was the perfect career. I was working from home, I was a web designer, I was building websites, and I could do whatever I wanted all day. And so I just couldn't understand why I was so depressed and addicted, not just to video games, but to like coffee, alcohol, weed, just everything, and it didn't make sense to me. And this went on for years, it just got worse and worse until I finally read this book called Missing or Lost Connections by Johan Hari. And it's an interesting book because there's a part in it where he talks about this experiment called Rat Park. And Rat Park was this experiment where they were trying to figure out why heroin was so addictive. And so they had two rat enclosures. In the first one, it was just a single rat, isolated, no other rats, nothing else to do. And then they put this little like heroin feeder where if the rat squeezed on it, it would get some, like water laced with heroin. And what they found is that that rat basically killed itself within a very short amount of time by overdosing on heroin. All it would do is just like keep getting the little heroin water. But the interesting thing was in the other enclosure, there was what they called Rat Park, and they had a bunch of different rats, and the rats had little wheels to run on, and they had good food and good water, and but they still had the heroin. They had the heroin dispenser. And the interesting thing was that not a single rat died. In fact, the rats almost completely ignored the heroin water. And when I read that, it just blew my mind because the whole like way that the medical system and society in general approaches addiction is that they think it's all about the addiction. And I realize that this is not true. It's never about the addiction. The addiction is just filling a hole from something that's missing in your life. So, for example, Alcoholics Anonymous or any of these other 12-step programs, whatever, the whole focus is on alcohol, right? You go to these meetings where people get up and they say, "Hi, my name's Andrew. I'm an alcoholic." And and then more and more people just talk about alcohol, alcohol, alcohol. You've got to resist alcohol. You've got to be sober, blah 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 blah. But it's never about alcohol. It's about the things that these people are missing in their lives. It's missing a sense of fulfillment in your career because you're not doing something that you really love, that you feel like you're giving something unique and impactful to society. Like when I was a freelancer, I was drinking coffee all the time. It's because I was working for clients like MasterCard and Johnson Johnson that I absolutely hated, that I thought were evil. So of course I was going to drink coffee because my body was fighting me every step of the way. And it would have been pointless, for me to try to quit coffee because the coffee was filling this hole in the same way that a vacuum is just going to suck air into it. It's impossible, like you can't fight a vacuum. Like if the vacuum exists in your life, if this hole exists where something meaningful should be, you're never going to be able to quit something. And even if you do quit something, you're just going to end up filling the hole with some other addiction. Like this went on for years with me, like if it wasn't coffee, it was weed. If it wasn't weed, it was video games. If it wasn't video games, it was drinking, and just on and on and on. And it was pointless. But the interesting thing about addictions is that they will teach you something because every time you notice yourself going for something like reaching for sugar or for candy bar or for alcohol, whatever it is, it's really important that you pay attention to what happened right before that moment. Like, what is it that triggered you wanting that thing? And when you start looking at that, then you can figure out why you are so addicted to things, and you can change the parts of your life that are making you unhappy. Like for me, the main happiness was, or the main unhappiness was being a freelancer and realizing that I wasn't actually free because I had clients who I had to work for. And at the end of the day, like, I had contracts. And so if they asked me to do something that I didn't want to do, I just kind of had to do it. I didn't have a choice. I mean, I could have fired them, but then you have to you lose the money, and sometimes you can't afford to do that, and it was a business model that made me incredibly unhappy because I felt like a marionette, you know? I felt like my clients were just, like, telling me what to do, and then I was just the pixel pusher that would do it, and, I didn't like the meetings, I didn't like anything about it, and so once I realized that and I started YouTubing, it was a much more fulfilling type of career, not just because it suited the way that I wanted to work, but because when I was able to work the way that I wanted to work, everything just started flowing, you know, I was more creative. I didn't have to drink coffee in the morning. And, you know, it just led to a lot of other changes, like going raw vegan. That worked a lot better for me too. And once I figured that out, that I wasn't, you know, addicted to sugar anymore because my brain just ran the way that it was supposed to run. And like this, you know, just sitting down in front of a camera and talking for 10 minutes without stopping, without getting creative block or anything like that, you know. So I don't know. I think it's really important to look at the things that you're addicted to, and when you really crave those things, and start asking, what is it? What is it that's driving this addiction, and how do I change that? And once you do that, your life will start getting a lot better and less addictive and more in flow.